coordinator and network manager, the IAS officer is also becoming a social entrepreneur and an innovator. We Indians have always been a self-critical people, and we frequently forget that our history as a nation is just 75 years. But realistically speaking, we have come a long way in fulfilling that tryst with destiny that we made in 1947. Our recent policies are looking simultaneously inward and outward, effecting a digital transformation in India's governance with over 1 billion Aadhaar unique identity cards, capitalizing on our demographic dividend by skill development programs for our youth, encouraging our industry by ease of doing business and codification of labor laws, uniformity of taxation by our goods and services tax, and revamping our education system through a new education policy, to name just a few of our initiatives. So, as the nation evolved and the public matured, major disruptions have seen government adapt, grow, evolve and transform to meet that challenge. And that is where our creative leadership lies. In a young nation like ours, leadership is evolutionary. But are there any constants in that leadership paradigm? The IAS is one such constant. Let us look at the Indian Administrative Service to which I belong. I am a member of that service which has become the sine qua non for leadership in our country. In most parts of the globe, including yours, the civil servant is a rather dull, boring person in a routine, small-time job. In India, by a combination of history and circumstances, the demand for grassroots, situational leadership has resulted in the IAS being seen as an exciting, aspirational leadership job option. What is the IAS? It is the administrative arm of the All India services, which also include the police service and the foreign service, the diplomatic service. The IAS is part of the permanent bureaucracy of our country, and it is considered the premier civil service of India. IAS officers serve the government of India as well as the federal states. I myself serve Karnataka, which is a federal state, and we work in a wide variety of posts and sectors. The IAS is expected, like all bureaucracies elsewhere, to remain politically neutral and guarantee administrative continuity regardless of the political party which is in power. The recruitment into the IAS is through a competitive combined civil service examination conducted by the Union Public Service Commission. The direct recruits into the IAS typically have a 30 to 35-year career, beginning at the very grassroots as assistant collector or subdivisional magistrate and retiring, like me, at the apex scale of government as additional chief secretary or chief secretary to the government. There are about 5,000 such officers in our country at present. There are many advantages to being in the IAS. Unlike the civil service in other countries who are backroom boys, the IAS is instantly recognized across the country. It opens many doors. So social prestige and recognition are a big plus point for a service officer. More important, from your point of view, is the wide variety and multitude of experience and exposure that the service provides. The IAS is a generalist service. Its members are expected to serve cross-sectorally. We are not specialists, we are generalists. I have spent 35 years in the service. I have worked in land administration, urban management, rural development, energy, education, handicrafts, to name just a few. I have been a trainer, a chief executive officer of companies, a judge, a social worker, and an executive magistrate. From handicrafts policy to sports policy, I have formulated or implemented them all. I have cleared files, conducted elections, and quelled riots. IAS officers are expected to enter a position of leadership, learn quickly, interpolate and extrapolate from their wealth of experience in multiple sectors, quickly take decisions and get things going. In terms of both depth and spread of exposure, the IAS is unmatched. The IAS is a tool packed with potential. Like all tools, it needs tuning and sharpening periodically. Capacity building and agility will enable governance to be more in tune with our changing times. Why then does this power-packed tool frequently fail to deliver? First, multiplicity of expectations. One reason is the inherent heterogeneity of our political economy, with the result that the political executive and the bureaucracy has to deal with multiple expectations. My world is a world where 7 blind men try and describe an elephant. A couple of years ago, I was in Mysore. It's a neighboring district. If you get a chance, do visit. It's a beautiful district, especially now that we have the Dasara festival on. I'm adding to your administrative responsibilities. I was in Mysore with a group of administrators, educationists, engineers and architects to study the feasibility of setting up a new university in the outskirts of that heritage town. As we inspected the proposed location, which spread over many acres of land, we tried to visualize an educational hub with teeming libraries and scholars and open spaces and smart classrooms. As we walked along, we found, to our dismay, that an irrigation canal ran right across through the land, cutting across what would be the built-up area which would actually house the university. How did we react? The engineer said, we will raise a wall on either side, we will hide the canal from view. Construction was their first thought. The promoters, the educationists, said, we will contact the irrigation department and we will do exactly as they say. We will follow all the rules and procedures. Compliance was their focus. The architect said, no, we will lay a tree-lined avenue on either side of the canal and have seats where the students can relax or study. Aesthetics was their way to go. And the administrators, me and my colleague, we said, what happens if there are heavy rains? The canal may overflow. I don't think you were in Bangalore last week. Our canals overflowed in Bangalore. You might have read it in the papers. So we had said that at that time, the canal may overflow, so safety of students and day-to-day hygiene has to be ensured. Worse, if the canal gets blocked for any reason, then the adjacent farmers will protest. So any blockage within the campus has to be prevented a priori. So, faced with the same situation, the same landscape, the same terrain, we have a medley of perspectives and a basket of solutions. And the public policy maker has to navigate her way and find a solution that is legally tenable, politically acceptable, socially desirable, administratively doable. Well, what will finally happen with the Mysore Canal, we have to wait and see. But one good did come out of this. I had been trying to persuade the promoters that the university needed a public policy school. I hope you open one too. This live demonstration was enough to get them to agree to this proposition. In such a milieu of varying perspectives, conflicting dialogues, and the ups and downs of relationships, how does policy get made and implemented? This is our first challenge. Second, we are poorly paid, relatively speaking. Among the several disadvantages of being in the IAS, remuneration is an important one. In proportion to the power it wields and the responsibilities that it handles, the IAS is paid pretty poorly. I started with a monthly salary of 2,200 rupees per month, which translates into how many euros? 20 euros or so, I think, yeah. Which is approximately about 300 or less than 350 euros a year. And it took me about 15 years to reach the salary which my daughter received in the very first month of her joining service as a lawyer. The modest pay packet with wide and discretionary power is a lure to corruption. Corruption is very real and very pervasive. But it is not corruption in the narrow bribe-taking sense. Honest officers are several, scrupulous officers are too few. Corruption may work as facilitation for making money. Corruption may take its most frightening form as actions that threaten public interest. Frightening because you can be perfectly legal yet destroy lives and livelihoods, and no one will know. For example, untrammeled land acquisition or incrementally sacrificing the environment in a trade-off for growth. Next, shaky tenures. Transfers are frequently used as weapons against the IAS. India's top management civil service cadre is being hobbled by the political executive, and I am quoting someone else's words now, with alarming regularity. So, is the transfer of an inconvenient officer a punishment? After all, every IAS officer signs up for the job knowing fully well that transfer is an occupational hazard and he can be moved without having a sufficiently long or meaningful tenure in one position where he can really do some good. While this as a general principle is accepted in the IAS, there is no gainsaying the fact that unless an officer is allowed a tenure of at least 2 years, or preferably 3 in one position, there is no way in which she or he can deliver results. As it is, the ecosystem in which an IAS officer operates is one of the toughest in the world. Recalcitrant, unionized subordinates, political bosses with different value systems, an over-eager media, and an overall environment not conducive to productive and speedy decision making. With all this, if you add extremely unpredictable and variable tenures, it is very difficult to deliver results. Next, weak support systems. The IAS and government in general work with an extremely weak support system. Unlike us, in the higher levels of bureaucracy, the lower tiers of government are poorly trained and unmotivated. Decisions are taken on the fly, sometimes in the absence or without full or accurate data. speak of political interference. When you come to India, you will hear this word very often when you speak of government. I consider it an erroneous phrase. In a democratic system, the political executive is supreme. Still, because of the glamour and the trust that the IAS commands, the media and the public unthinkingly support the bureaucrat. There was a case a few years ago when a minister wanted to entrust a major construction work to a government corporation for execution. But the local officer, an officer like me from the IAS, wanted to entrust it to the local level public works department. Now the corporation, which was the minister's go-to, had its own senior engineers, owned its own equipment, had a better track record, and followed more sophisticated methods of financing and engineering. The local unit of the public works department was, in comparison, less equipped, had fewer engineers at local level for monitoring, subcontracted the work to small-time contractors. Yet, the media raised a hue and cry, lionizing the officer and deriding the politician. It was the Hassan example for those of you who are from here. Next, over scrutiny. We work under too much scrutiny, debilitating and paralyzing scrutiny at times.